Your swatch should look something like this, with knit 1, purl 1 ribbing on the top. Ribbing is nice because it's reversible. It's the same on the back and the front. Also, the edges don't curl as some fabrics do, like stockinette. It's also special because it's even stretchier than stockinette fabric and good for the brim of a hat. Now we need to learn to cast off or bind off our stitches. To bind off your stitches, knit 2 stitches. Use your right needle to lift the first stitch up and over the second stitch, removing it from the working needle. Knit another stitch, so you again have 2 stitches on the working needle. Lift the first stitch up and over the second stitch and off the working needle. You should always have 1 or 2 stitches on the working needle. To bind off your stitches, knit 2 stitches. Use your right needle to lift the first stitch up and over the second stitch, removing it from the working needle. Knit another stitch, so you again have 2 stitches on the working needle. Lift the first stitch up and over the second stitch and off the working needle. Continue. Knit 1, up and over. Let's bind off the rest of the stitches together. If you're not paying attention, you might end up with 3 stitches on the working needle. You'll need to take that third stitch back off. At the last stitch, you should have 1 stitch remaining. Make a big loop, cut or break your yarn, and pull it through the loop to complete your swatch. Nice! You now have 87% of the skills you'll need when knitting, so take a moment to congratulate yourself. Let's mark that section complete. But we're not done yet. Now we need to block the swatch. Blocking is extremely important because wetting the fiber allows it to relax and gives you an accurate sense of your gauge. It also makes your knitting look better and feel more comfortable to wear. Soak or submerge in cold water until fully wet. Squeeze very gently or roll up in a towel to remove excess water. Never wring your knitting out. Lay on a flat surface or towel to dry, gently shaping into a rectangle. Once dry, measure your gauge. Count how many stitches over 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Lay a measuring tape or ruler on top of your swatch. In the stockinette portion, count the knit stitches starting at 0. Look for the V's. Counting over multiple inches improves the accuracy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and just a fraction of 15. The pattern tells us what the gauge should be. 14 stitches to 4 inches or 10 centimeters. That's great! We can cast on our hat. If your gauge is different, what happens? If you have more stitches than you're supposed to, that means you're knitting tighter than the recommended gauge. You could practice to loosen up your gauge, or you could buy a larger needle size. Why is it so important? First, how many stitches in 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters are we supposed to have? 14 stitches divided by 4 inches gives us 3.5 stitches per inch. So how big is the hat? Size small is 72 stitches around. 72 stitches divided by 3.5 stitches per inch gives us 20.5 inches or 51 centimeters. Say you had 18 stitches in 4 inches instead of 14. How many stitches in 1 inch? 18 stitches divided by 4 inches gives 4.5 stitches per inch. So how big is the hat? 72 stitches divided by 4.5 stitches per inch gives 16 inches. Yikes, that's small. On the same note, if you have fewer stitches in 4 inches, say 12 stitches, you're knitting too loosely. You could either try to tighten up your gauge, or you could buy a smaller needle size. How many stitches in 1 inch? 12 stitches divided by 4 inches gives 3 stitches per inch. So how big is the hat? Size small is 72 stitches around, and 72 stitches divided by 3 stitches per inch gives 24 inches or 60 centimeters. If you're wanting a size small, that probably won't stay on your head. The bottom line, gauge is important. You don't always have to be exact, especially with something stretchy like a hat or a scarf where size is pretty unimportant. But if you're too far off, your garments won't fit. To summarize, to figure out how big your hat will be, calculate gauge over 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. Find the number of stitches around that your hat is. Divide the number of stitches in a round by your gauge over 1 inch. The result is the circumference.